feed these people. He was testing Philip. For already he knew what he was going to do. For the little bit of mind as we get into our church conference, and for the next week, there'll be a process of kind of understanding the direction, understanding the mission, but better yet, just kind of understanding what a church is. Kind of understanding how it works. So today, just kind of looking at it and looking at the feeding of the 5,000. Well, actually, it was 10,000. We're going to call it aligning with God. That's our topic for the conference. And so I'm going to show you a crucial point, and I'm going to take my time. I'm waiting on the Holy Spirit. I'm going to take my time. I want you to understand that in order to align with God, there are some steps that we have to take as Christians. And in order to take the steps, we first have to commit to not going backwards. Amen. So for the time that's mine, the topic is, what will you do? So I'm going to tell you a little story. And I just want you to, I'm going to tell you the story from two perspectives. From a little boy's perspective, and from a man's perspective, three perspectives, and a woman's perspective. All right. Come on now. I'm going to tell you this story, and I just want you to listen to it real close, because the only way that I learned about the Bible growing up is I had to put myself in that spot. It was imaginary for me. So when I read about the road to Damascus, I actually had to pretend like I was on the road to Damascus, and I had to put myself there to understand the Bible. It wasn't easy for me. And I had to read children's Bibles. So when I think about God and I think about the Bible, I always go into my imaginary to make it make sense. So I'm going to tell you a story from a little boy's perspective. And there was a little boy. And this little boy lived outside of Nazareth. And God had a certain calling on this little boy's life. This little boy didn't know it was a calling. He didn't know that he was going to start a ministry that was going to impact the world years to come. He didn't know that what he was doing was setting the tone for the future. This little boy is mentioned in all four Gospels. They never tell you his name. And I'm not going to tell you his name because I'm going to preach on that next time. I'm just going to preach on his name. But John just called him a lad. Some people just called him a boy. And one day, this boy was hanging out. And Jesus, who had just went through this dramatic incident because John the Baptist had been beheaded, he had been working, he had been changing lives. Jesus was tired. And his disciples saw that he was tired. And you have to understand, because sometimes as disciples, we want to put ourselves, and I'm going to take my time, we want to think that the disciples are greater than us. They're just men. The disciples saw he was tired, and sometimes the disciples act more like bodyguards to him. So immediately they said, Jesus, you need to rest. We haven't ate. We haven't eaten anything. Let's rest. So Jesus said, cool, let's get in the boat and let's go across the water and let's go over there and rest and eat. Well, that was the plan. Jesus already knowing what was going to happen. So in all the things, you got to understand, there were people seeking Jesus. But on that day, as he got into the boat, there was a group of people who walked around the Sea of Galilee to try to beat Jesus to where he was, because they was that interested in what Jesus, it was 5,000 men That's why I said, Diakonos, we have a problem. There were 5,000 men seeking to know about Jesus. 5,000 men with women and children. They said it was 10,000 people. 10,000 people walking in the heat to get to church. 10,000 visitors. 10,000 visitors walking around the Sea of Galilee. Some did not probably have shoes on. It was hot. Many of them had children. It was a long walk. But anytime that you want to see Jesus, the walk or the journey does not matter.
Yes, Lord.
10,000 people walked around the Sea of Galilee to see Jesus because he had something that they felt like they needed. Have you ever been in a situation to where you would do whatever you could to get to Jesus? Sometimes it's when we're at our lowest point that we will get up and say, I don't care how I feel. I don't care what's inside of me. I'm going to get to Jesus. So I imagine when they got there, it was hot. They didn't smell right. It was rough. Jesus is on the boat. People are coming behind him on boats. And the disciples and the deacons and the stewards and the leaders are looking like, man, what's going on? We were supposed to rest today. And there was a little boy. And he saw what was going on. About 11 years old, maybe 12 years old. So the little boy stopped what he was doing and he ran home. And I don't know the little boy's home structure. Maybe it was like mine. Maybe it was like Nate's. Maybe it was like my other friend up here. I don't know this little boy's home structure. But he went home to his mama and his daddy. And I don't know the relationship between the son and the daddy. And I don't know the relationship between the mama and the son. But when I imagine the boy walked in and said, Mama, Daddy, I'm going to go follow Jesus. Mama and Daddy might have been sitting down arguing about bills or talking about how they were going to make ends meet. And your 11-year-old son walks in and says, I'm going to go follow Jesus. I don't know if you understand that effect that it has on a man when he sees his son decide to follow Jesus. I don't really know if you understand when a man sees his son make an executive decision to follow Jesus. I don't know if you understand when a woman sees their daughter make an executive decision to go with Jesus.
Yes, Lord.
I'm sure Mama didn't ask him what time are you coming home, and Daddy didn't ask him who you was going with. All he knew his son was going to follow Jesus. And Daddy probably said, what am I going to do? Son looked at Daddy and said, Daddy, I can't wait on you. Daddy said, son, just let me put my shirt on and let me put my work. I can't wait on you, Daddy. You just follow and you just catch up. Because sometimes it might take a little bit longer for some people to get to Jesus. And you might be the only thing that takes them down. The son has now influenced the daddy. Are you going to wait on me, son? No. Daddy, I'm going to go. Daddy looked at his wife and said, I got to get to this revival.
Come on now.
I got to figure out why my son has made an executive decision to follow Jesus. So the boy went on. He's running out of the house and Mama say, hold on, baby. Mama, I got to go. Bring me your backpack, boy. Mama throws 2 fish and a loaf of bread in there. The boy ain't paid no attention to what Mama doing. She just know he was going to follow Jesus and he might get a little hungry. He throws his backpack on and he got 2 fish and 5 pieces of bread in there. He wasn't concerned about the lunch because in a couple of minutes that lunch was going to change the world, but all he was trying to get Jesus and Mama was trying to make sure he ate and Daddy was trying to figure out where he was going.
on now.
So the boy gets over there. And he notices is that it's not what he thought it was going to be. He thought that people were going to be worshiping and singing. He thought that there was going to be a choir singing. He thought that people were going to be dancing. He thought that people were going to be excited. But when he got there, he noticed that the people were kind of crazy. And they had attitudes. And they were upset. Because what we don't realize, sometimes as church folks, we get attitudes.
Come on now. Come on.
We don't realize sometimes as church folks, we act a little crazy. You want me to make it plain?
Come on, make it plain.
Sometimes we don't realize that when the ushers stop us at the door because we can't walk through offering, we get a little crazy.
Come on now.
Sometimes we don't realize that when that section is roped off, and there's a reason why they got it roped off, we get a little crazy. Sometimes if there's no parking in front or no parking over there, as church folks, we get a little crazy.
You're right, Jock. You're right.
Probably won't come back after that. But we noticed that the people was acting a little crazy. So he positioned himself to where he wouldn't get in any trouble. But you got to understand, it was late in the evening, it was hot, and they was hungry. Late in the evening, it was hot, and they were hungry. Late in the evening, it was hot,
and I'm hungry.
and they were hungry. You get church folks late in the evening at the evening service, it's hot,
Come on, Jock.
and they hungry. All they thinking about is the styrofoam plates in the back. You got that HEB chicken and that HEB cake. I don't know how focused on Jesus they really are.
Come on now. You in there, Jock. Come on now. Come on now.
So-
You are in there.
Hold on, Steph. I'll tell you what I'm doing. Won't be long now. So, they were acting crazy, and this boy he didn't know what was going on. So, but the disciples started tripping. The church started tripping. The church couldn't understand why these people were disturbing Jesus. Church was supposed to be closed. There was no evening service on the calendar.
Come on.
Yet they followed Jesus.
Come on.
Disciples, they're not bad people. They're just thinking about the welfare of Jesus.
Come on now.
Disciples turned to the Messiah. And they said, Messiah, send them away. Send them away. We don't have time for this. Could you imagine? And so what happened is always somebody listening. Church folks got a hold to it. And can you imagine what rumors started? Did you hear what the leaders said? They said, send us away. They said, don't let them. People started leaving. They was not leaving because of what Jesus had done to them. They was leaving because what the church had done to them, what the disciples had done to them, what the disciples had said to them, how the disciples had looked at them, what they heard the disciples say. Stay quiet for a minute. Do you know the reason why so many people are unchurched?
Come on now. Come on. Come on.
They went somewhere and said something that they thought somebody didn't hear.
Come on.
The disciples were more concerned with how people were dressed and what people were wearing and where people were sitting and how people were carrying themselves. They weren't concerned with the fact that the people were hungry.
Hey, come on now.
They was more concerned with what the young lady had on. They was more concerned with the man that didn't smell so well. They were more concerned with the fact that they did not have enough to provide for 10,000 people. But let me tell you what my God said.
Yeah.
So, make a long story short, Jesus said, Philip, come here. Jesus said, Philip, come here. By this time, people done got a little antsy. And he really didn't look at Philip. He just kind of told Philip, where can we go to buy bread for all these people? See, that's the one thing you got to understand, see. It's more to a church than you can really think about, you know. Behind closed doors, there are people trying to figure out how are we going to help people with their electricity bill, and how are we going to help the need, and how are we going to meet the need. There's some things that go on the backside.
That's right, come on.
Man, how are we going to buy bread for all these people? Philip replied, man, we got to work for months to pay all these, buy bread for all these people.
All right now, come on. Teach this. Teach
So the other disciple told him to send the people. Philip said, we don't have no money. So they said, Jesus, what we going to do? Jesus said, you feed them.
Come on now. That's what he said.
Jesus said, you feed them. You develop the ministries. You create the breakfast ministry. You create the ministries. You mentor. You change the direction. You begin to tithe. You begin to handle yourself. You begin to find your direction. You begin to do something. You work with the mentor program. You work with the young ladies program. You work with the choir. You work with the junior ushers. You call the college students. You.
Come on now. All right.
But then Jesus goes flip. Remember, Jesus said, what are we going to do? Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you just didn't have enough?
Hey, yes, Lord. Yes, Lord.
Have you ever found yourself in a situation to where
Yes, Lord.
you realize that the amount that you had could not support your family, could not support your ministry, could not support. You've been called to be a parent. You've been called to be a father. You've been called to be a deacon, but the amount that you have is not enough.
Come on now.
So Jesus could not understand. Why were they asking this question? Why were they asking this question? Did they really not know? Have you been in a situation to where everything got so bad that your back was against the wall and you did not know how you was going to make it? And it took you a while to realize something. You're homeless. Ain't nobody to loan you a dime. Ain't nobody to help you through this situation. You've called the church several times. Ain't nobody answered. You ain't got no friends answering. You've allowed yourself not to associate with your church congregation. So because of your inside insecurities, you have established no relationships with nobody. And so it's all just you.
Come on.
Back up against the wall. 10,000 people to feed. 3 children to feed. Rent student. Light bill student.
Come on now.
Look to your neighbor and ask them, when their back was against the wall,
When your back was against the wall,
when did they realize
when did you realize
that you were sitting right next to Jesus?
you were sitting right next to Jesus?
When did they realize all the time that Jesus was sitting right here?
Yes, Lord.
Jesus said, what are we going to do?
Yes. Yes.
All of that time, you allowed the devil to come in and give you insecurities and make you forget that you were called. And
Come on now.
all that time, Jesus is sitting right next to you.
Come on now.
You even got stressed out.
Come on.
Anxiety set in. stuff began to set in and you forgot that Jesus was sitting right next to you.
Yes, come on.
Didn't know how the ministry was going to survive. Didn't know how you was going to get some gas. But you forgot that Jesus was sitting right next to you.
Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord.
Didn't know how we were going to make it and where we were going to go after LBJ. But I think we forgot that Jesus is sitting right next to us.
Yeah, John.
Trying to figure out how we going to pay this month. And what's going to happen this month. And what are we having a church conference for? But we forgot that Jesus is sitting next to us.
Come on.
What are we going to do? The community's suffering. There's no connection. Diakonos, we have a problem. You have to ask yourself, what happens when we're gone? Are we preparing somebody? Look around. Stand up if you're a young man in college. Diakonos, we have a problem. You can sit down. You got 3 20-year-old men standing up right now. And I'm going to be playing with you. If we're going to have a church conference and we're going to make a difference, we got to figure out what are we going to do to get the young people back through the door.
Yes.
We got to go here in a couple of years. There got to be a new deacon staff. There got to be a new breakfast ministry, a new children's ministry. Who are we preparing?
Come on.
I know we got young men, but we got some young women too.
Come on.
You're a young woman, stand up, 20 years old, older. Stand up.
Amen.
Diakonos, we have a problem.
Yes, Lord.
So, the community was suffering. The people were hungry. And the people that Jesus had ordained could not stay focused enough to complete the ministry. Connections were not being made. Because they had so much going on internally. They were working with Jesus, but there were some other things that they were still concerned about. So, here's the crazy part. So Jesus was sitting there quietly, told you I'm going to take my time today. And I imagine that if you got 10,000 church members or church visitors at church, somebody had some food in their purse.
Come on, come on, come on. Yes, they did.
Right now.
Yes, they do. They know with some chips and fries.
Somebody got something to eat.
Yes, they do. Hello.
The disciples were concerned with where we going to get this bread from. Somebody out of 10,000 people. See, everybody's not ready for sacrifice.
Come on, come on.
Somebody out of 10,000 people had a brown bag full of chicken. I know 10,000 people. Somebody had some chicken. There was a little boy. Jesus had his eyes closed. He said, "Bring me the baskets." Disciples looking around. The little boy had been listening to the conversation since he walked up. He knew his mama had put something in his bag. Come here, little boy. Little boy came. No more than 11.
My God.
And he brought what he had to Jesus.
Amen.
Oh. One of the disciples came back. See, the daddy, he's at the revival now. Daddy hadn't been going to church, but he saw something in his son. He called his people back to church. And the disciple looked at it, and he said, "What are we going to do with that?" Get back here. He brought his best to Jesus.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
And the church belittled him.
Yeah.
See, some of us, the reason why we don't tithe like we do, because we think the little bit that we got is not enough. And we're embarrassed about maybe having a pocket full of change. But if that's what you got, and that's what God told you to give, The boy was ridiculed. He brought his best to Jesus. And the church laughed at him. He brought what he had. I stopped by to tell you, just start giving.
Yes.
Just take a little bit of what you got. You got to work your way up to 10%. Just take a little bit of what you got and watch how God happens. I'm telling you, I got a problem with that, but I'm getting better. Just take a little bit.
Yes.
Don't worry about the bill. Just take a little bit.
Come on now.
And give.
Come on.
And watch what Jesus does.
Oh, yeah.
The little boy brought his best to Jesus. And he placed it in the hands of Jesus. Why are you still holding on to it?
Right.
Rosa placed it in the hand of Jesus.
Right.
Any issue that you got,
Hey, yes,
place it in the
Lord.
hand of Jesus.
Yes, Lord.
Any hurt that you got, place it in the hand of Jesus. Any pain that you got, put it in the hand of Jesus. You might just got a little bit. And you might have been scared to do that little bit, but put it in the hands of Jesus. Jesus took what the boy had. And he lifted it.
My God, my God.
And he said, thank you.
Yes.
God, thank you for my house.
Yes.
God, thank you for my children.
Thank you.
God, thank you for my mother. God, thank you for the little things. God, thank you for the opportunity. God, thank you for the light. God, thank you for the grass.
Yes.
See, we don't take time to thank you for the little things.
Yes, Lord.
Then he called all the disciples. Deacons, come here. Does God have to say it twice? Deacons, come here.
Yes, Lord.
Deacons, come here.
All right.
I'm almost done, deacons. In order for us to reestablish our vision, it's not just about Pastor Q.
That's right. Come on.
He's just a vessel.
Yes.
But what are we going to do?
Yes.
Don't be afraid to make that call and say, I'm a pretty good pool player. Can we start a pool ministry? I play some marbles pretty well. Can we start a marble ministry?
Come on.
I can ride a bike real well. Can we raise some money for some bikes? Some of them might laugh at you, but if God put it on you,
Hey, yes, Lord.
you ain't got to leave. Just keep pressing.
Yeah.
Just keep pressing. So he called up the disciples, 1, 2, 3, 4. What's that, 5, y'all? Where is... One of the disciples had a bad leg. Judas, he said, Judas is still in the back.
Come on, obey.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Give me 6 leaders of the female persuasion. Come on. We're going to preach this thing and we're going to be done. 6.
Okay, they got you, baby. I'm going to sit down. They got enough.
So, slide down.
That works.
So, say that, young fella, because you know what this young fella is. This young fella is the ministry.
Amen.
He is the fish and bread ministry. But nobody gave him a chance but Jesus. And I know you feel like that. I know you feel like that nobody will give you a chance. And I know you're worried about where you are and who you are and what you used to do. But I'm going to tell you, Nate, you got a ministry. I'm going to tell you there's a ministry inside of you. And that's the only way this church is going to grow. We got to grab a hold to our ministry. So there were 12. And hold your arms like you have a basket. God said, distribute it amongst the people. Well, there was an issue before the distribution came. One of the disciples were thinking, and God hears everything that you think.
Amen.
He said, but I'm hungry too. Why can't we eat first before we distribute this fish to these people who we don't know is out there? It's some good people out there, but it's some haters out there. It's some people that don't mean good to the church. It's some people that don't mean good. It's some Gentiles out there. It's some non-believers out there. It's some unchurched people out there. It's some church people out there that hate church people out there. It's some people out there that don't mean us any good.
Come on now.
Jesus said, why are you concerned with the things that I'm not concerned about? Just feed them.
Yes.
Why are you concerned with the things that don't concern me?
Yes.
Just feed them. So they distributed the fish. There was nothing left. I imagine that he was grumbling, and we didn't eat meat. We ain't had nothing to eat. Ain't no more fish in these baskets. Jesus said, go collect the leftovers. Do you realize that when you give, in the Bible it says they brought back 12 baskets of leftovers that they could take with them. See, when you give, God gives it back. Press down and you know the rest. What are we going to do when you give?
Yes, Lord.
They got a basket to take home. And if they don't want to eat it, they can make some plates and sit out in front of the house and serve fried fish until they make enough money that they want. God will provide.
Yes, Lord. Yes, He will.
So that's the first thing we got to do. What are we going to give? How are we going to handle it? What are we going to do as a church? What are we going to do as a family?
Come on.
It's in the Bible. They had not eaten. There was 12 baskets of leftovers. God gave it to them. They left with a basket of leftovers. When you give, God gives it right back. The basket's down. Take a go.
Amen.
So what happened after that? You may go. I'm going to tell you real quick. So what happened after that? The people were fed. This is the hard part that you got to realize. Out of the 10,000 people, the goal of the 10,000 was to reach one.
That's right.
Out of those 10,000 people, I don't think all 10 joined church. I don't think all 10,000 devoted their life to Christ. But I imagine there was a few that decided through hell or high water, I'm going to go with Christ. We don't need a lot of numbers. We just need to worry about the one. We just need to worry about that one who comes and say, what must I do to be saved? We don't need 10,000. All we need is a few. So I challenge you today, church. Start in your household. Bring them with you. Start in your family. Bring them with you. Invite them. If they don't come, it's okay. Invite them again next week. Jesus said the only way we're going to change this thing if we got to start ministry ourselves. And once you invite them, you are now the living vessel that they see.
Yes.
You might be the only church that they see.
Right.
That little boy might go out and change some lives. But I'm going to tell you something. If you wouldn't have never volunteered at the Girls and Boys Club, we wouldn't have never found that little boy. If you would have never volunteered at the girls' shelter, we would have never found that young girl preacher.
Right.
If you would have never volunteered at the school, we would have never changed that young man's life.
Come on.
1969, and I'm going to close. Group of young men called the Black Panthers started free breakfast in their community. Not only did they start free breakfast, they changed the culture of education in their community. How did they do that, Coach? Well, some of the teachers came and visited Huey and a couple of guys. And they said, since you've been feeding these kids breakfast, the behavior rate has been down. They've been doing a lot better in school. So I'm asking yourself, if Huey and that group of Black Panthers wouldn't have never stepped out and started that breakfast program, what would have happened to those young men? But understand, once you start that, it's going to be the government or somebody who tries to shut down your ministry.
Come on.
Somebody will notice the good and the change that you're doing in your community. Somebody will come in and say what you're doing is illegal. Somebody will come in and say what you're not doing is right. Somebody will shut the doors on your ministry. Somebody will come in and say that you're a communist. Somebody will come in and say that you're really not about God.
Come on.
Somebody will say, how in the world does a breakfast program have to do with God? 1961, there's a group called the Freedom Riders. They jumped in the bus in order to protest the bus terminals. A group of young people. Now I'm going to tell you why our young people are so few. Wherever they were going, the bus blew up. Like I said, whenever you start a ministry, there'll be somebody to shut it down.
Right, come on.
There's some people sitting here right now who went through the civil rights movement. The civil rights movement was a constructive ministry. It was. Those young people blew up. Now you ask me what's happening to our young people? Why they're not in church? Because they bought into the culture of what they see on the outside.
That's right.
How will we solve that? We can't go get those 20-year-olds. But it's some 11-year-olds right there with a loaf of bread and some fish that we can start on. It's going to be hard to go get them 20-year-olds. But if we start working on these babies and we go back to creating programs and we go back to creating things to change the community, a change is going to come.
Hey, come on now.
If we start with them babies, God is trying to show the disciples, don't be concerned with what's going on. Let's connect. Don't be concerned with their sexuality. Let's connect. Don't be concerned with how much money they have. Let's connect. Don't be concerned with whether they're a single parent. Let's connect. Don't be concerned with whether they're on drugs. Let's connect. Don't be concerned with whether they're homeless. Let's connect.
Come on.
And that's all God is asking us to do.
Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord.
Let's connect.
Yes, Lord.
Stand to your feet.
Amen.
Thank you for your time today. One of the things you have to realize that Philip was getting tested. His faith was being tested. And he failed. But that's okay. You have to understand that right now your faith is being tested. It is not a 911 situation.
Okay.
It is not a situation where you call it a task force. It is a test of your faith.
Yes, Lord.
God has launched an emergency test system to see whether your faith is in place.
All right.
So when it looks like you're not going to make it,
Hold on.
God is testing your faith. Young ladies and old ladies and all ladies, when it looks like you can't find that right person in your life, God said, be single with me. I am your bride and your groom. And I'll send you that person. It's just a test of your faith. I watched my sister stand on the stage about 3 Sundays ago, and she gave us testimony. And it was just a test of her faith. That God will take you through, and He will help you make it through if you stay connected. As we stand here today, be thankful for where you are. Thank you for allowing me to stand. You know, church folks get crazy when their pastor doesn't preach. But if you haven't figured out by now, I preach every single Father's Day.
I love you.
And as I stand here today,
I worship and adore you.
my daughter,
Just want to
that
tell
works
you,
with Caleb, I love you.
Lord, I love you
Joshua,
more
I love you.
than anything.
Corinne, I love you.
I love
David, I love you. Elijah, I love you. Tell somebody you love them. Bridget, tell my baby I love her. I don't see her. Tell somebody you love her. If you are dealing with your faith and reconnecting yourself to God, make your way to the altar. I'm going to help you today. If you are dealing with that,
I worship just want to tell you, Lord, I love you more than anything. I love you, Jesus. I love you, Jesus. I worship and adore you. I worship and adore you. Want to tell you, Lord, I love you more than anything. I love you, Jesus.
Lord, I love you.
I worship and adore you. Want to tell you, Lord, I love you more than
Hey, as we sat here today, just join hands. Somebody's hurting right now. But I challenge you men to go out and change somebody's life. I don't care, just give them a word of encouragement. Our life is not our life. Most gracious God, you have brought us through so many mountains.
Thank you.
God, even when we didn't have faith, I watched you work miracle after miracle after miracle after miracle.
God, I thank you.
Even when we didn't feel right and we thought it was over, I watched you heal our bodies. I watched you pick us up when we failed. I watched you provide bread even when I didn't deserve it, God. I watched you allow me to be a vessel. God, we thank you. I watched you work on us as a church, God. I watched you take our pastor and our congregation through storm after storm. But each storm just made us a little stronger. God, we got to understand that we need ministry right now, God. Father, forgive us. And Father, the ones that don't know you, forgive them because they know not what they do, God. But God, right now, we need you to grab our own to us. Hold us up. Allow us to be better individuals and better parents. God, thank you for our families, God. They walked us through the bitter and the sweet. And God, as we continue, allow us to find out our purpose, God. Allow us to understand it's not about the dollars, God, but it's about the glory, God. Allow us to understand that everything that we need eyes, God. Allow us to understand that you are sitting on our right hand, even when we forgot you were there, God, and our backs were against the wall, and we had nobody to turn to. Yeah. God, as we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, we fear no evil, for they are with us. Thank you, God. Thank you for those valleys. Thank you for the lonely days, God. Thank you for the days when I had to turn to you, God. When there was nobody with me, God, I thank you. When I felt so alone, God, you wrapped your arms around me in the midnight hour. And you held me up. God, we thank you. We don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. But we know right now, God, we know that we have a Savior. Father, as we continue, thank you for the graduates, God. Thank you for our new leaders. Father, bless our church and bless our home. Somebody's hurting on Father's Day, God. Hope. We'll be so ever careful to give you the honor, the glory, when our back's against the wall, when we don't know how we're going to make it, when we don't know how we're going to eat, when we don't know where it's going to come from. We'll be so careful, God, to give you the honor, the glory, and the praise forever and ever. Let the church say amen. Give yourself a hand clap. Clap for you.
Go give the Lord a hand clap of praise, bless the Lord. And give yourself up for Brother Jock. Straight answer. Listen, before you leave, I want you to be praying for the family of Brother Michael Watson's son was in a terrible accident, and we're praying for him. We're praying for him. And let me say this, their visitation is limited to immediate family, but you can pray, and we will have our team that be seeing to that family, but pray for them. What a difficult Father's Day to sit at the bedside of your child. That's the reason why. Don't waste time. Whatever you got, do it now. Whatever you need to say it now. Whoever you need to hug them now. Time to stop the stupid stuff and the foolishness. There again. Over there. Lord, use us for your glory. And help us to be our best. God bless you. Have a great day. Visitors, we'd like to meet you. We'll see you next Sunday morning.